Om Agyanam Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksururmilidam Yana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Vasudevasutam Devam Kansachanur Mardanam Devaki Param Anandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Jai Sri Krishna and welcome back to this segment of the topical discussions on the Bhagavad Gita. And today's talk will be on conquering the enemy of the soul. I'll be talking about who is the enemy of the soul and what do we need to do in order to continually ensure that the enemy of the soul is gradually eliminated. Why it's important. And what we need to do to ensure the purification process continues. I'll be discussing these issues in the context of some of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita so that we'll all relish and understand the relevance of those verses in the context of our lives. So what do we mean by enemy of the soul? When you say enemy, what does that mean? Enemy means somebody that doesn't want us to be happy. Somebody that makes our life miserable. But what is that makes the soul happy? That is the question. So if we are talking of the soul being happy, what makes the soul happy is listed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The soul can be happy only in association of the supreme living being, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, and no one else. That is how the soul is happy. So whatever takes the soul away from this association of the supreme personality of Godhead is the enemy of the soul. So what do we need to do? We need to identify and eliminate the enemies of the soul. In chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, under the section on Karma Yoga, this is very clearly described as two things. One is delusion, which means falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya, where we keep thinking that I am this body, I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, I am. It's when you are deluded because you are in a state of illusion due to the very strong force of Maya. That is one of the enemies, because with this I am mentality, we forget that in reality it is He who is the root cause of everything that happens. The second enemy is lust. And what is lust? Lust is the desire to satisfy one's own senses, the desire to continuously enjoy oneself for one's own pleasures. And these are the two very obvious and serious enemies to the soul. Today's section, I'll be talking about delusion. And next week's session, we will go into this very interesting topic called lust. Now let's look at this word delusion a little bit deeper. What does that really mean? It is stated that in the Bhagavad Gita, it is nature that causes all movement. Deluded by ego, the fool harbors the perception that says, I did it. We always proclaim to be the doers. I mean, in fact, there are so many contributing factors. Let's take a simple example. I made tea. Did you? All you did was put the tea leaves in the water and let the water boil. It is the water, the boiling water, that did the trick. It is the tea leaves that had to stand in the sun, to be in the sun, to build up that aroma. It is the milk that had to bring the flavor. It is the sugar that will make it sweet. All these different ingredients, due to nature, contributed towards the tea. And we proudly proclaim, I made the tea, I did it. So similarly, when we succeed in life, when we get something, when we achieve something, because of the propensity to be deluded by, I did it, we forget that there are many contributing factors. And as a result, we deprive the soul of the association with Sri Krishna. So we were talking last week of karma yoga, and we talked about first the confusion Arjuna had about whether to renounce or to take action. Then I covered this part. I talked about renunciation is difficult, and it is recommended that his prescribed action with detachment is better. And we talked about karma kanda and karma yoga. Even if Arjuna is qualified for renunciation, he should still perform prescribed duty with detachment. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. What does that mean? Perform prescribed duty with detachment. Normally, when we do action, it is based on our own free will. We did this because we want to. We want to go to a movie. We want to go overseas. We want to study. We want to get married. We want to everything. It's up to us. The action is based on our desire. That is not always the right thing to do because it's not prescribed. The recommended situation is act based on prescribed duties. Now, this word prescribed duties has to be understood very carefully. There are two types of duties. Duties in a material world that we have to do to help others to be selfless, and duties to uplift our spiritual benefit. Last week, we talked about the need to give up attachment to results because it's necessary to be able to remain focused in the work being done at the material plane and remain focused in self-realization in the spiritual plane. Keep focus. Don't give up. So this is because we need to continuously do what has been prescribed. In the material world, we have to do duties prescribed according to the Vedas. The Brahmanas have to do the Brahmanical responsibilities. Kshatras have to do their duties prescribed. The Vaishyavas have to do the Vaishyavas' duty. The Sudras do it. That is because that is their nature. That is what is best. That's how they contribute. If you think about it, all these people are doing things not for themselves, but for the benefit of humanity. People need knowledge, so they go to the people who are knowledgeable to learn, to uplift their knowledge, their gyan. People need protection, so they go to the Kshatriyas for protection. People need to have food. They need commerce, so they go to the Vaishyavas, the people who do this work. People need support, help, and the Sudras support. So in other words, the prescribed duties are meant to facilitate the very balanced, equitable nature in the world. And when we talk about duties in a spiritual plane, they are duties prescribed for self-realization, which again is necessary. Now, irrespective whether we're talking about duties prescribed in a material plane or prescribed for self-realization, what is important is state of mind. What is the state of mind while performing these duties? In chapter 3, verse 9, it is stated, Yajna artat, for the sake of sacrifice. Karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana. Karma bandhana means bondage. That means karmana is then action. Antriya else, loka, material world. I am this karma bandhana, bondage through one's work. Tat, that artham, for the sake of karma, action. Kautanya, Arjuna, son of Kunti, mukta sangha, free from attachment, samachara, perform properly. Work must be done as yajna. sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, work causes bondage in the material world. So here we are talking at a state of doing work for the purpose of sacrifice. And that has to be done as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. And that is the state of mind one has to do work according to the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 9. If we reflect on this, we realize that if we don't do that, there is karma bandhana, bondage, which means we are bound to the reaction of what we do. And this brings about karmic reactions. So now we look at the word sacrifice. Why do we sacrifice? What is the need for sacrifice? Lord Krishna designed this material world to encourage yajna or sacrifice, so that we can make material advancement based on sacrifice. And by worshipping the Lord for material well-being, one becomes purified. Now let's think about this. Can anybody succeed without making any sacrifice of time, of effort? No, even in the material plane, those people are very successful. They spend many, many hours working, studying, practicing, sacrificing their time, and then they succeed. It makes a lot of sense. But that's why sacrifice is so central. You have to defer the pleasure for you to relish benefit. That is why we should not focus on the immediate result. We need to focus on the work. Now, this sacrifice is necessary to complete the cycle of sacrifice. Now, this is another important learning that we have to understand. What is the cycle of sacrifice? Now, we are just one small part of the entire universe, and everything that functions based on sacrifice. In the Bhagavad Gita, a very nice description of the cycle of sacrifice has been presented. It is as follows. According to Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas is a source of information that talks about prescribed duties. So where do we get prescribed duties from? Through the Vedas. And when we undertake the prescribed duties, we are able to please the demigods because we are undertaking our prescribed duties, because we are doing things as a sacrifice to the Lord. So when we are doing our job, we are sacrificing our benefit for the benefit of humanity. We are sacrificing our time, our sense enjoyment for the sense enjoyment of the Lord. We are trying to be part of this universe. Then the demigods are pleased and they will bestow rain. With rain, cultivation is enabled. So rain enables cultivation, and with cultivation becomes the source of food. And this food has to be offered to the Lord. Why? Why do I offer food to the Lord? Why can't I just eat it? It's because the Lord is the compiler of the Vedas. So this closes the cycle of sacrifice. Because the Lord compiled the Vedas is the source of prescribed duties. Prescribed duties done will please the demigods. Demigods will bestow rain. Rain will enable cultivation. Cultivation is a source of food and grains, which has to be offered to the Lord. So this is why by undertaking sacrifice, the food becomes sanctified. So this is what we mean by complete the cycle of sacrifice. It's very interesting that this cycle of sacrifice is followed by certain people, certain devotees. They sacrifice their time, their life, their livelihood. They sacrifice their families. They sacrifice everything just to continuously remember the Lord, to be his devotee. They follow it very strictly. Not just food, they sacrifice their lives. But there are people who do not follow the sacrifice. They rather enjoy, they rather do things, they rather do what they feel like doing. So there are two types of people. People who follow, who sacrifice everything for being the servant of the Lord, and people who do not follow. Now, it's very interesting. In text 13, it describes very clearly that the santas, the devotees, they offer food to the Lord with love. And they engage in sacrifice. Not just food, other things. They sacrifice Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam. What is this? Sravanam means hearing about the Lord. Kirtanam means describing or singing about the glories or activities of the Lord. Smaranam means remembrance of the Lord. Archana means worshipping the Lord. This is what they do. Like what you are doing now. All of you are sacrificing your time, your effort. This is aloof from contamination of sinful association, because you are doing a sacrifice to the Lord just by hearing about the Lord. That is sacrifice. By talking about the Lord, that is sacrifice. And if we keep hearing and talking and describing and even singing bhajans in the temple, while singing bhajans, what are you doing? You are sacrificing your voice, your sound, your time for the Lord. This will help us remember the Lord. So these are all examples of sacrifice that we do. Why? Because by doing it, we become aloof from contamination of sinful association. More importantly, then we always love the Lord. Now, what happens if we don't do this? The non-devotees, these people, they prepare food for personal enjoyment, just like a thief. They eat sin. They can never be happy because they are deluded. This is in text 13. Those who eat without offering the food to the Lord verily eat only sin. So this is a very important text that emphasizes the need to do things in a way that enables you to be free from reaction. Text 19 makes a very nice observation about a detached worker. It says, as a matter of duty, without attachment to fruits of work, attain supreme. See, the key phrase is as a matter of duty. You do your work not because you want to, but because you're doing it out of duty, without being attached to the fruits. So you continuously focus on doing the duty, either proper guidance or acting as a matter of duty, continuously to achieve perfection. What is the result? Attain the supreme. Now, what is important is this is a continual process. Nobody becomes perfect immediately. It takes years and years and years and effort. But the process of perfection occurs through a mindset where you act only on behalf of Krishna. There's no attachment to results. Engage all kinds of activities, but completely unattached. When you do this, you are engaging in akarma. Akarma means no reaction to good or evil work. Now, this is what a detached worker does. You see, there are two things. Number one, without attachment to results, fine. Number two, act as a matter of duty. That is very important. Now, hang on, let's understand this. So let's say somebody starts it and gradually does akarma, does get purified. Finally, you reach the state of perfection, right? Just like if you're boiling water, the water gets hotter and hotter until it comes to boil, starts boiling, right? That means you have reached that zenith. Does that mean you don't have to do anything? You already reached that level? You already achieved perfection? That is what is important to understand. Because when you reach perfection, you no need to perform Vedic rituals which are done for purification, the impulse activities. So if I don't need to follow Vedic rituals, I don't need to do all this, Why am I doing it? You know, you got so many acharyas and gurus, like Gurudev, who had already reached the stage of perfection. Srila Prabhupada already reached there, but he still continued acting and doing work. Why? Because he had to set the right example. So we recognize that it is a process to perfection, but once you have reached the perfection, you still do it to set the right example. And in the Gita, describes King Janaka and even Lord Krishna, who continue to do things despite having reached perfection. Now, I discussed just now that the cycle of sacrifice have two categories, people who follow and do not follow. But there is a third category. That is people who do not need to follow. These are self-realized souls. So those who follow are undergoing the process of purification of the dirt and sin in their heart, gradually cleaning process. But those who have already completely cleaned, they don't need to follow. And they really don't have any duty. Because they have reached the state of Atmarati. Atmarati means they take pleasure in the self. The self gives them pleasure. Their pleasure is coming from inside. Atmatrapt means satisfied in the self. Atma Shantosta means fully satiated. They're fully at bliss, fully at peace. This is called self-realized. There's nothing for them to do because they don't need to depend on other living beings or devas to give them happiness, to give them joy, to make their soul connected with Krishna. They're already connected with Krishna. There's no obligation to do any prescribed duties. They don't have to be doing things for anybody under any circumstances. They have no taste for material pleasures. It's gone. It's to them, material pleasures are not worth it. There's no purpose or gain in performing such action. There's no point, and even if they do it, there's no gain. They already gained the highest. It's just like you're a billionaire. What is a few ringgit? What is a few $100s? You already gained everything. This is nothing. There is no reason in not performing such work. And what is important is one who has purified spiritual intelligence does not perform prescribed duty with desires, but does them without attachment to set the right example. This is one very, very important learning from the Bhagavad Gita. These are the people who set the pace, like King Janaka. King Janaka obtained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. When he reached that perfection, he continued to do his duties to show an example. Chapter 3.21 says, whatever actions great persons perform, common people follow. Whatever standards they set, all the world pursues. So this is for great people who have reached perfection and continue to work to let people follow. In the Kali Yuga, it's the other way around. In this black age, dark age, it's sinful people who become leaders and everybody follows. It's not just King Janaka. In fact, Lord Krishna himself said, "Oh Partha, there's no work prescribed for me within all these three worlds, nor am I in want of need of anything or obtain anything, yet I am engaged in prescribed duties." So how beautifully Lord Krishna gave himself as an example to Arjuna. Look, Arjuna, I don't have to do all this. I am the Lord of the universe. What is there for me to gain? First, he gave the example of Janaka. And then he said, he gives himself as an example. You see, we have to understand how the soul, the realized soul works, self-realized soul. First things first, why the self-realized soul works? First question. Answer is to set an example for general mass of people. So he's working to set an example. But how? With detachment from fruit or results, from the results of work, as a matter of duty, under proper guidance to please Lord Krishna. That's how he works. Detached from fruits of results, matter of duty to please. And what are the benefits of such work? Attain the Supreme. This is describing how a realized, self-realized soul works. So we talk of karma yoga, we are talking about karma also of the soul, a self-realized soul. How does that work? So we have to set an example for the general mass. So if somebody is already self-realized, he continues to chant, he continues to pray, he continues to do what needs to be done so that people follow. With detachment of fruits as matter of duty to please the Lord. This is what they do. Why? Because ultimately, the benefit is achieving Krishna. All right? Okay, we've covered this issue of sacrifice. Now it's very interesting to compare the ignorant and the self-realized person, how they act. It's very interesting. The way it is structured is so beautiful. It first talks about self-realized soul, then says, okay, guys, by the way, let's also talk about the ignorant people. Now, last week, I mentioned the yoga ladder of ascension. I said the lowest level is animal life, human life, karma kanda. This is when people are ignorant. They are interested in satisfying material desires. That's below this. Now, from karma kanda, you got to progress to karma yoga. Karma yoga accepts transcendental goal and is known as a yoga practitioner. This is a self person on the verge, on the process of purification compared to this. A person who is ignorant of what he should do, how he should do it. So as long as they're ignorant, they are here. But once they gain the knowledge and they engage in transcendental goal, engage in yoga, they are higher. Now let's understand this a little bit more. Okay, now hang on. There are two types of people. People who engage in karma yoga, people who don't engage in karma yoga. What's the difference? Now, this is the situation. People who are self-realized have different desires compared to people who are ignorant. I remember in the earlier class, we talked about transcendental desires, which are for people who are self-realized, physical, emotional, and intellectual desires for people who are ignorant. So when you have transcendental desire, you want to satisfy Krishna's senses. So you work without attachment to fruits to set an example. Now, what do you mean by Krishna's senses? Does Krishna have senses? Of course he has senses. He has the sense of hearing. That's why when we sing bhajans with love, with purity of heart, with all emotions, he hears. Surely Krishna can hear. He has got ears because he is the master of all senses. We want to satisfy Krishna's sense of taste by offering prasadam. That's why the prasadam has to be so tasty. It's for Krishna. He wants to taste that. He wants to also see his devotees glorifying him, see them talking about him, remembering him, listening about him. That is his sense of sight. And he wants to smell. He wants to smell the beautiful flowers that is in the garlands that are put on him. So what are we doing? Why do we go to the temple and offer garlands, offer prasadam, sing bhajans? Why? Because we are trying to satisfy Krishna's senses. We are trying to gradually become self-realized. But if we don't, we are satisfying own senses. We work with attachment to results. What happens when we do that is we're deluded by duality of the mind. Sometimes happy, sometimes sad, sometimes upset, and there's no end to it. Okay? So we are distinguishing between self-realized people whose sole aim in life is to satisfy Lord Krishna's senses, and an ignorant person whose only aim in life is to satisfy own senses. So what do these people actually do? These self-realized people who are sacrificing their lives in order to connect that cycle of sacrifice and to serve him. They are people who act without attachment, to set an example for the sake of leading people in the right path. They are free from responsibility of doership. That means they don't think they are the doers. They are just a part of the entire cycle. They realize that they are not doing anything. They are just instruments in his hand. They understand that they are separate from the senses and sense objects and does not engage in sense gratification. Now, last one is very interesting. Never disturbs the ignorant. This one is very important. When we say never disturb the ignorant, what does that mean? So these people on the path of self-realization, they're not supposed to disturb the ignorant because in text 26, it says, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. For people who are ignorant, who are attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties. So I prescribe duties, but I'm attached to the result. So if you say you are a Brahmin, oh, I'm doing my Brahminical work, but I want to get the money for doing it. If you say you're a businessman, yeah, I'm doing my business, but I get a lot of money for doing that. If you say you are a government official, administrator, yeah, I want to make a lot of, I want to become very powerful doing that. So there is a result, you're attached to that. So what happens is the Vedas has been set up with a lot of rituals, a lot of performance of sacrifices, everything that you need to do to gradually elevate, to gradually become less ignorant is in the Vedas. All directions for material activity, what to do, what not, what is yama, niyama, how to control, everything, do's and don'ts are there. Ultimately, to understand Krishna. That is the purpose of the Vedas, for gradual elevation. Now, the people who are self-realized, how do they relate to the people who are ignorant? They should not disturb their understanding. Whatever they understand at that level, they should be allowed to understand it at that level. But what these people to do is act by showing how the results can be dedicated to serve Krishna. How they should lead their lives and dedicate it to the cause of Krishna. These people who are self-realized do not need to follow the Vedic rituals. By Krishna consciousness, one derives same result following prescribed duties. So these described duties are all meant for people who are ignorant, who gradually need purification and elevation. So when you say act by showing results, what does that mean? It means they are constantly hearing about the law. It means they are constantly describing to or singing the glories of the Lord. It means they are perpetually in remembrance of the Lord. It means they worship the Lord. So they are doing this. These are the acts which are actually sacrifice that they use to lead by example for others to follow. And by people following them, it facilitates the gradual elevation. So in other words, people who are already self-realized, they just continue doing what they're doing to help others gradually become elevated. Because this is a gradual process. Now we're going to look at the difference between the ignorant and the self-realized in terms of the consciousness and influence. You see, the people who are ignorant are in material consciousness. That means they can only think in the context of material pleasures, material expectations, material cause and effect. Their mind is fixated in that plane, just like Arjuna's thinking was primarily on his relatives, his guru. He could not think higher. Whereas people who are self-realized, they are in Krishna consciousness. They are thinking about Krishna. They think about spiritual upliftment. The people who are ignorant are under the influence of false ego. They think they are the doers. I am the doer. I am. It's mine. I am the enjoyer. I am the owner. I have. It is me. That is false ego. That is not who they truly are. Ego is identity, but false ego means having a wrong understanding of who you are. And in chapter 2, we learned that you are the soul, you're not the body. But when we connect ourselves with the body, that is the false ego. And the people who are self-realized, they are not under influence of false ego, they are under influence of internal energy. What is internal energy? The spiritual energy, the soul that manifests within, influence them. So when you are under the influence of false ego, you consider themselves as doer, karta. I am the doer. I made the tea. I bought this house. I got this job. I came out first in class. It is me. But those who are self-realized realize that the whole material nature that does everything is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the doer. Karta, he. And because of that, because an ignorant person considers himself to be doer, he takes all credit of doing everything independently. But self-realized people, they take it that Supreme Lord is the Rishikesha, the master of all senses, that directs the material nature to create gross and subtle body. So there is nothing that they can take credit for. So this is a very lovely verse that explains so clearly why we all are bewildered by false ego to a point that we think we are the doers. By right, we are not the doers. So we talked about how learned and ignorant people act. We talked about gradual progress in Krishna consciousness, engagement of the realized soul and results in acting in accordance. This is what we'll talk about now. What is the results of acting in accordance with the injunctions or not acting? What happens? So this is described very nicely in chapter 3, text 31 to 33. It says that if we don't act, out of envy, we disregard the teachings and do not follow. What nonsense, what Bhagavad Gita, what Srimad Bhagavatam, what Vedas, all this is nonsense. I don't have to follow. I am smarter than all this. These things are all written by somebody imagining some nonsense somewhere. So what happens? You are bereft of all knowledge about yourself and about the Supreme. There is no knowledge. You will not get knowledge. The knowledge will not be there. And without the knowledge, you become a fool. Whatever endeavors for perfection is lost. Just like it's a punishment for disobedience to order the supreme executive head, so you go to jail. Similarly, because you disregard the Vedas, you think of yourself as the doer. When we consider ourselves a doer, we are the kartas. We are envious of people who do it. We disregard. That is the result. There is no knowledge, fooled and ruined. On the other hand, if we act according to the injunctions, then we understand the material nature is under control of Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he is the doer. Now, question is how to follow these teachings. There are two ways. You must have faith, shraddha, without envy. Envy means you should never feel that jealousy, that there is something or someone more powerful than you. Even with faith, it doesn't mean you'll succeed. Why? Because faith alone is not enough. You need firm faith. It's a big difference. Yeah, I faith. Yeah, I faith in the Bhagavad Gita. I faith in this. I faith. But is that faith firm enough for you to truly believe that the Lord is in your heart? Most of us answer is no. Because there are doubts. Because we are still deluded. Because we do not truly have that conviction yet. It'll come, but it is not there. So if you don't build that firm faith, there is no benefit. Never gets liberated. You become some sort of a philosopher. You know, a friend of mine who has helped me a lot in this process of learning the Bhagavad Gita told me, Rumesh, very good, you're doing these classes. But remember, you have to build your faith and you have to go through the practices. You have to chant, you have to do what needs to be done. Because the whole process is transformation. So building this firm faith means reaching a stage where you believe without any doubt whatsoever that Krishna is in the heart. I'm going to tell you a short story about this. There was a small girl who was having a serious defect in the heart, big hole in the heart, very small girl, 4 years old. And so she was going for an operation. And before her operation, she asked to see the surgeon. The surgeon went and told her, don't worry, you'll be okay, nothing will happen, I will put you to sleep. She says, no, doctor, I'm not worried about that. I know you will operate properly. I'm not worried about operation, but I have a small request for you. Then the doctor asked her, small girl, 4 years old, asked her, what is the request? So doctor, promise me something. He said, what? Doctor, when you operate me, are you going to open my heart? Are you going to cut it open? The doctor said, yes, of course, I'm going to operate the heart. He said, okay, doctor, when you open the heart, Lord Krishna is inside. Okay, now I know he's there. Just ask him whether he likes my bhajans or not. Because I can't sing as well as Mama. Mama sings all the time. She says, Krishna is in your heart, you pray to him, but I cannot sing as well as her. You just ask him the simple question and promise me, you will tell me what he says. Okay? The doctor looked at her and says, okay, beta, I promise. I will tell you. She said, okay, I'm happy. At least some purpose of this whole operation is there. So the operation started. Very, very severe situation. The heart was really in a bad shape. This is a very good doctor. But unfortunately, after 10 minutes, the heart stopped. The girl died. So the doctor was looking at the clock and said, time of death, 4:20, whatever. And he had tears in his eyes. He was thinking, how am I going to keep my promise? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And while he was thinking to himself, the nurse jolted him and said, doctor, the heart is started. And then he continued the surgery without any problem. And it was a success. So when the girl awoke from her sleep, first question she asked the doctor is, doctor, did you ask Lord Krishna if he liked to hear my bhajan? With tears in his eyes, he told her, beta, the Lord loves you so much that he wants you to keep singing his bhajan for the rest of his life. And this doctor, henceforth, never did a surgery without offering or praying to Lord Krishna. This is a true story from India. So this is faith. This is what we mean by faith. All right? Okay. Now moving forward, we look at what is called engagement of this realized soul. This person knows that his real identity, he's part and parcel of Lord, he's entrapped in material creation, he must dovetail his activities in devotional service. He's engaged in the Lord's activities, unattached to material sense, and is not disturbed by material reactions. Now, because he's not disturbed by material reaction, what happens? His mind is in equipoise, and he can get rid of all the enemies of the mind. So when he's engaged in self-realized soul, the enemies of the mind disappear. Now, one more important thing is we have to act in accordance with one's conditional nature. What does that mean? It means people have natures, we are whatever. We are sometimes aggressive, sometimes very docile, sometimes very inquisitive, whatever it is, that nature is there because of the three modes that comes about from Maya. Impossible to get out of Maya through theoretical knowledge. We are perpetually in bondage. So when we are in this nature, we are forced to act in accordance to nature. What is the solution? The only solution is transcendental platform. Gradually, we try to go beyond this modes of material nature, but we should never suddenly give up, We got to stay in our own position to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. So this point of gradual process is very important. It's a gradual process. It's very, very important to understand that the gradual process purification has to continue, but there are obstacles. The principles to maintain gradual purification of oneself requires us to overcome these two obstacles. It's like you are boiling the water, but you cannot boil because something is stopping you from boiling. You cannot continue. What are those obstacles? First is attachment, and second is aversion. Let's understand the meaning of what is the meaning of attachment? Attachment is bringing one's senses in contact with the objects. We attach. See what you like to see, hear like what you hear, taste what you like to taste, speak what you speak. We attach. Our senses are contact with the objects. Aversion means hatred for those who obstruct our sense of enjoyment. How can you say I cannot watch the movie? How can you say this? How can you hate people who don't allow you to enjoy your senses? That's aversion. So these are the obstacles. Very nicely in text 34, it says, attachment and aversion, the two stumbling blocks to the path of self-realization. So we are in a material engagement due to unrestricted sense enjoyment. How to get up? That's the key question. Never come under the control of attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks to self-realization. What is this? Attachment to senses? Best attachment is loving service to Krishna. If at all you have to be attached, you have to be attached to loving service to Krishna. Aversion from Krishna consciousness. Avoid detachment from this, any stage of life. Then the purpose is to connect. And another way is to follow the rules of the reverend speakers. As long as the material body is there, anesthesia is there, you have to follow the rules. Sense regulation sense gratification under regulation may also lead to go astray. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, it is far better to perform one's natural prescribed duty, though tinged with faults. It may be faulty. You may not be doing well. You may not be able to do what you're supposed to do correctly. It doesn't matter. Better just follow it than to follow another person's prescribed duty. It's preferable to die in the discharge of one's duty than to follow the path of another, which is fraught with danger. Now, why is that? Why is that? Because you see, prescribed duties can be material or spiritual. Material prescribed duties are done when you act on the influence of modes of nature as Brahmana, Kshatriya. Spiritual duties, acting based on direction of spiritual master, perform anything under the guidance of spiritual master. Now, why is it you must perform your own prescribed duties? It's because if you do not follow your duty, follow other prescribed duties, it creates the option to reject one's duty. If person uncomfortable and rejects one's duty, goes for sense gratification. Prescribed duties not only for purification, but also for a subtle benefit to society. And giving up one's natural tendency is very difficult. So this is why we should not give up. So when we follow prescribed duty under direction of authorized people, we are given the purpose for performing duties is clear. Everyone has to cleanse the heart by gradual performance and understanding the purpose of going this path. That is the only way to transcend modes of material nature. So Lord Krishna told Arjuna that don't imitate others, do your duties, because spiritual duties are done as per ordered by Guru for Lord's service. Material duties are as per psychophysical condition according to the modes. And everyone has to cleanse the heart by gradual process by performing one's duties. So if we are born as people who are intelligent, we should use our intelligence and continue to do what we are good at, rather than to change what we are good at, because that is our gift. That is something that we have acquired, that we are used to, that we should use. So we're good at business. We should use that ability to benefit society. Similarly, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was strong. He was a warrior. He was trained. He was supposed to use his capability to continue the fight, and rather than go into the jungles and be renounced. So working according to one's duty is important. There are three modes: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And when you talk about yoga, jnana yoga is meant to purify and enlighten the pure-hearted. They already sattva. You purify further because they are pure-hearted. So you're purifying the mind through knowledge. But those who are rajasic, we need to do niskama karma duty because we can purify and enlighten the impure-hearted. So when you're impure, because there is some negativity, there is some tamasic nature, you're very passionate about doing things for your own, that means you're impure, you need to do niskama karma. It means do work without desire. But neither jnana yoga nor niskama karma yoga can help people who are here. They are beyond it. But these are the limitation of spiritual injunctions from karma and jnana yoga. So what does that mean? That people who are purely tamasic have no way to reach the Lord at all? No. Lord Krishna says, yes, there is a way out. That is called bhakti yoga. So when we engage in bhakti yoga, anybody, even the most sinful person, can reach the Lord. So merciful because everybody is under the influence of material nature. And if we are too tamasic, too much of a sinner, does that mean we are condemned? No. There is still a way to connect. All right? And this is how all these verses is teaching us how to conquer delusion. Allow me to summarize what we have covered so far so that we have a good grasp of the topic. We started by saying the way to conquer the soul's enemy is first to act based on prescribed duties with detachment. We also have to act on the basis of performing a sacrifice. That's how karma, that's how we act. Based on prescribed duties with detachment and on the basis of performing a sacrifice. And while we're acting, we have to continuously act as a means of setting the right example for others. And this way, we are becoming his instrument. Smaranam, Shrananam, Kirtanam, all these things has to be done continuously to show as an example of what it has to be done. And this will require us to gradually progress. Because when you keep doing it continuously, you gradually progress. And in that way, you can overcome attachments for material desires and aversion for spiritual pursuits through that gradual process. Because attachment for material desires and aversion to spiritual pursuits are actually obstacles. But the last part was very important. We have to work in accordance with our own nature. And don't try to do something that is not aligned to our nature. Because the end goal really is to work for his satisfaction of the Lord's senses and not our senses. So these are very wonderful, very well described and very relevant to us all. Because we are all at the very lowest stage. And if anything, it gives us hope. Hope that yes, there is a way forward. Yes, I can develop myself. And yes, as long as I act based on prescribed duties with detachment, as long as I act on the basis of performing a sacrifice, don't expect a result. As long as I set the right example for others by doing what I need to do and gradually progress in Krishna consciousness, I will be able to work for the satisfaction of Lord's senses. And by doing that, I will be able to conquer delusion, which is the soul's enemy. This concludes today's session. I'm open to any questions or comments anybody has. It's 5 minutes to 9. Is there any questions you have or anything you'd like to say? Any comments about the class? Was it okay? Were you able to follow? Anybody? Why is it necessary to adhere to Vedic rituals? All right, great question. Vedic rituals are there for people who are very impure, people who are, karma khandas. That means they are not on the path of realization. So they say, these are things you have to do, don't do, don't do. It's like you're telling the teacher, why do I have to learn ABC? Why can't I just write a dissertation at PhD level? Because without these rituals, without control of your senses, you cannot progress. But it is said that if we gradually go into bhakti yoga and we start learning from a guru and we sacrifice our life for the benefit of the Lord, then we don't need these Vedic rituals. So it's a question of purification. If you are ignorant of what you can and cannot do, you have to follow this manual of life, this Vedic. But if you are realized, if you're not ignorant, gradually purifying yourself, then you don't need to. All right? A nice example is a kite. How do you fly a kite? You fly a kite because somebody is holding the string, right? The string is holding the kite. The kite is able to fly because it's under the control of the string. That is the control. If you cut the string, the flag just falls down. So the control is what limits the action. These are the rules and regulations that you have to follow. If you surrender, then things work out. Surrender means following the rules and regulations. Somebody told me something very interesting. He said, when you are a robber, you're very worried as a thief, the police will catch you, running all over trying to escape the police. But when you surrender to the police and say, okay, I surrender, you go in the police station, the police will give you full protection. They will take care of you. They will make sure they will give you armored car. They will give you food. They will make sure that nobody can hurt you because you have surrendered to them. Similarly, if we surrender to the Lord, He gives us full protection. But to surrender, you have to follow His terms and conditions. Just like the police, to surrender the police, you have to follow the police terms and conditions. So, as long as we don't surrender, we have to follow the Vedic rituals. All right? I hope that answered your question. Are there any more questions? No more questions?
Yeah, thank you. It's very informative.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. It is your lovely and very encouraging support that I'm getting that gives me the reason to work harder to come up with even better presentation.
Very much.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we are enjoying very much.
Yeah, a lot of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful feedback. Again, I'm very appreciative for your lovely comments. Again, this is something that I'm very appreciative, but it's all the Lord Krishna's blessings. I'm just his instrument, and I want you all to please help me. Help me by going to the Geeta Ashram, thinking of the Lord, singing his bhajans, doing what you need to do by associating with people of like-mindedness, sharing this lovely message to as many people as possible. And those of you who are thinking of even conducting these courses, let me know. I'll give you the slides. Whatever I have, I'll give it to you. You know why? The more we work to help others to remember him, the more we remember him. Thank you so much. Very lovely session. I'm having another session next week about lust. Very interesting, very exciting, because that's the other biggest enemy we have to take care of. And together, we will learn something next week, and we'll summarize the whole topic with that. With that, thank you so much. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Gurudev.